Hey everyone, it's Monday night, it's nearly 5:30, so I'm getting this thing going. I'm gonna go grab the YouTube link for anyone that wants to join us there. Oops. And just let me know that you're here and that you can see me and that you can hear me. Excellent. People are coming in. Hi, Crystal, Paige, Agnes. I think I saw Lizzie. There's the YouTube link if that's how you would prefer to join. Excellent. All right. So before we jump into consent, I want to go over a few popular questions about my upcoming classes that open for registration on Wednesday. So the weave pole class, it is my current thoughts on how to train weave poles with two. So it is based on a 2x2 method, but beyond the first step, the first few steps, it doesn't really follow anyone else's method. It just happens to be how I'm currently training 2x2s. But it does start at the beginning. So the gold spots are going to get the most out of it if it is a dog that has no weave pole training, or you know 100% you want to start over from the very beginning. That being said, if you're wanting to add some enhancement to your current weave poles, so I've had a few people ask me, my dog's already weaving 12 poles, but he just kind of knows how, and I really blah, 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 blah. So if you want to add skills, I really would recommend the silver level, because you'll still be able to post videos and ask questions. But then kind of the first week and a half, 2 weeks, we're going to be focused on getting the behavior. So it would be something that your dog already knows if your dog's already weaving 12 poles. So the silver spot, if you do want some feedback and some dialogue with me, would be your best bet there. Because once we get the dog, that's what I love so much about how I'm currently doing it, is we get the dogs to 4 poles pretty quickly, and the proofing begins before we ever get to 4 poles and as soon as we get to 4 poles. So we start proofing entries and exits on 2 poles, and then we start adding and handling and all the other proofing as soon as we get to 4. And you'll also see how I get to 12 poles and kind of how my brain works with weave poles right now. So those are my suggestions there. If the dog is learning to weave or relearning to weave, so from the very beginning, I say gold spot. If you just want to add some skills to your dog's weaves, I say silver spot. Or if you don't mind starting over and doing some assignments on the very basics, then gold spot is okay as well. And then there were a couple of questions about the age. On my class description, it says 15 months. I put 15 months as kind of an average because you will be doing weave poles nearly every day if you are taking a gold spot in the class, because you want to get as much out of me as you can, right? So the training itself lends sort of to training 1 or 2 short sessions every single day. Now, they're very short, 2 minutes or less, but it's still every day. And for if younger than 15 months, most dogs probably wouldn't physically be prepared for that. So 15 months is the average. Some dogs are going to be able to handle that at 13, 14 months. Some breeds are going to need to wait until they're 18, 19, 20 months old to start that much weaving. So use your best judgment. I use the average of 15 months because I don't want to see 9, 10, 11-month-old puppies working through this weaving every day. All right, so use your best judgment for that. And then the main questions on the mechanics class. So it is a dogless handling class. So think of it as it's a foundation. You know how we break every obstacle into all these micro skills? It is and we break it into things that we can do in our living room with our dogs. The mechanics class is a micro skills class for you. So I've broken down your common handling techniques into key movements that we are going to teach you in isolation that you can do in your living room, so you don't need a ton of space. As we add speed to those skills, not a dog, but as we add speed, you might want a little bit more speed. So you'll move from your living room to your backyard. But you don't even need real equipment. You just need things that can represent equipment. And that whole list of things that I think you will need is in the class description. So that you don't need a ton of space. You don't need proper equipment. You don't even need a dog. That'll be the class next time, is adding the dog to it. But the class came to me and I really, really got excited about breaking these things down a while ago when I had a running coach, and he broke down the mechanics of running into these micro skills that I could do while I was cooking dinner. I could practice my running mechanics. I wasn't going for a run, but I was practicing my running mechanics. So especially the first half of the class, you'll feel like this is not agility. This is not handling. Megan is crazy. And then you'll start offering behavior. When we get into the more putting those key elements together, you'll offer a front cross like you've been doing it your entire life. You'll offer these behaviors because they're in your repertoire. So that's what the mechanics class is about. And it is not specific to a handling system per se, but it is about honing in on all of your physical cues. So it is more in tune with a motion-based handling system. If your dog is like way on verbals and you don't have to worry about what your physical cues are, then this isn't going to be a good class for you. But I think most of us are still, even with our verbals, relying on our physical cues for the most part. So that's what this class is about, is making sure that our physical cues are consistent and they're fluent, so that when you do learn new handling techniques, it feels easy because you have the pieces, the building blocks. Okay, so if you have more questions about either of those classes, just drop them in the comments. It's fine, but those, and I will make sure I try to answer them. They open on Wednesday morning, 9:30 a.m. PT. And it's all on the FDSA website, how to enroll and things like that. So let me know if you have more questions about the classes. And now I will slow down a little bit because now we are going to talk about consent specifically in agility training and agility competition. Okay, so now for your featured presentation. Okay, so some people get a little weirded out when we say consent in dog training. Probably if you're here and you're listening to this and you're not new to me and the way I teach, that word doesn't weird you out. If the word consent weirds you out, we can talk. You should do some reflection and figure that out. But I really do just like to think of it as have to versus want to. And where do you fall on that line as a trainer? If you are 100% has to, you're probably not, or welcome, because I'm glad you're here listening to me, because I'm going to try to pull you onto the wants to side. But if you're 100% has to, the way you train is you will do this or else. Okay. And so you're talking about training with commands, right? Because the definition of command is something that is taught with the contingency of or else, right? You will do this or else something yucky is going to happen to you. And so then the behavior is built through avoidance of yucky behavior, of yucky consequences, sorry. Right? And then on the other side of that, we have want to, right? And I think that's where most of us are at, is we really, really, really want to be building the dogs that want to do this for us and with us. Okay, so we want to build that want to attitude. And that comes from when you do this behavior, good things happen. And that's about training cues. And that is the definition of a cue, is that it has been, the behavior has been built up with positive reinforcement. So we have like those two ends. And where you fall on this is probably how much choice, or how much you're willing to, how much choice you're willing to give over to the dog. And I kind of think of it like this. What are you willing to do if the dog doesn't do it? Because I'm pretty sure most of us are not willing to put a shock collar on the dog if they refuse to go across the dog walk, right? We're not like, it's not that important. We're okay with, you know, if I told you, you know what, I think the only way that this dog is going to do agility is through the use of a shock collar, I would never say that to you. But I think we would all just go, you know what, maybe agility isn't worth it. All right. So is holding them by the collar and walking them across the dog walk, is that acceptable? Is that how far you're willing to go? If your dog says, I don't really feel like it. That's different than if you are proactively holding the dog's collar to make them feel safe, but they're willingly doing it. I'm saying the dog stops, puts their feet in the ground and says, no, I'm not going to do it. And you just kind of grab their collar and you kind of push them along the dog walk. Are you willing to do that? Because this is now a have to, right? Are you... So the dog stops in front of the dog walk, says, I don't really feel like it, starts kind of looking around. Are you willing to go, come on, it's okay, no, come on, no, you can do it, it's only going to hurt a little, it's fine, no, go. Are you willing to nag? What about a cookie lure? Is that force? Okay, dog stops, says, I don't really feel like doing the dog walk right now. You pull out a cookie, put it in front of their nose, and they're like, okay, I'll follow the cookie, and they follow the cookie across the dog walk. Are you willing to do that? Come on, puppy, it's okay. Look at, that's a good puppy. Oh, it's a good cheerleading. Dog says no, and you cheerlead. And they're like, oh, okay, I'll do it. In all of those situations that I just described, you asked the dog to do a behavior. They were like, no thanks. And you compelled them in some way. Now, we started at shock collar. We got to, so there's some range in how we can compel them, which is, I think, why we get kind of stuck on this consent piece. So the first thing I think you should ask yourself is how far you're willing to go to make the dog do something. Because I get asked that question a lot, where you be running a course and the dog, you know, doesn't do the weave pulls, and the student will turn around and ask me, should I make them do it? And I go, show me how would you make them do it? That's the better question. It's not if you should or shouldn't make them. It's how would you make them? So everyone has their limits to how much compulsion you would be willing to use. Okay, which is fine. Everyone can make their own decisions if the cookie lure is not harmful, or the cheerleading is not harmful, or the holding them by the collar and kind of pulling them across the dog walk. The dog will probably be fine in all those situations. There's going to be some dogs that aren't fine in those situations. And if you're here, you probably have a dog that you've done that to. You've done that. Oh, it's okay. But you're a good dog. You're so brave, and kind of cheerleaded them across the thing. And they were like, for then 6 months, not going anywhere near the dog walk. They stopped when they saw the dog walk 3 obstacles back, right? Sometimes it backfires. So if you're here and you're listening, you probably have a dog that sort of compulsion, it backfired on you. Okay. Am I making sense so far? I'm just going to check the questions. The more I think about consent, the more I find that I am forced to think about back chaining. Tell me more, Lizzie. I want to hear more of your thoughts on that. I think I know where you're getting at, but go ahead and tell me a story. Forced to think about reinforcers first. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Now I see there's a little conversation going on. All right. So here's where it goes a little bit wrong. This is my true story. I was listening to a podcast on consent. It might have been one of Stremming's. I don't know. I don't even remember. But this person, either Sarah or whoever she was interviewing, or maybe it wasn't even Sarah's podcast. All I know is I was listening to a podcast and someone told a story of they were at the grocery store and the mom has, I don't know, a couple of kids or one kid, and they're standing in front of the ice cream selection at the grocery store. And the mom says, you can have you choose whatever ice cream you want. Choose whatever ice cream you want. And the kids start going, the eyes go like this big, and they start going, oh, I want that one and that one and that one. And then the mom says, yeah, but not this and not that. And it has to be the big size because we're a family. We're not getting a whole bunch of little ones. So then she started putting all these restrictions after she said, but you have a choice. And I thought that was a fantastic way of looking at it, is that if you give choice, give it, but then honor it. You can't give choice and then go, yeah, but not that choice. Right. And then I listened to that, and that was like in my head. And then I'm at the grocery store and it happened right in front of me, except it was yogurt, but exact same thing. Go ahead, choose whatever yogurt you want. And they start choosing, but not that one. No, that one's full of sugar. You can't have that one. That's where we get into trouble. And that's where the dogs stop trusting us, because we say, have whatever yogurt you want. And then when they start to go for the yogurt that they want, we smack their paw. We go, not that one. It's okay. How about this one? This one. But here, can I lure you to this choice? And the dog's like, Jesus, come on. You said I could have that one. Now you said I can't. Okay. I'm going to grab the comment. I think also for the first time for a dog to try a new obstacle, or the first couple, bribing with the collar grab if the dog knows it and just doesn't want to do it. Yeah, so everything is going, it's not a do this, don't do that. It's where in this dog's learning history are we at? How, is the dog comfortable being grabbed by the collar? If you went and touched any of my dogs by the collar, they would go with you. They wouldn't feel it as force, because that's a behavior that's used in their lives every day. I grab their collar and we go somewhere and they follow me. So that procedure has already been trained through consent and trust and built up with positive reinforcement. So if you walked my dogs across the dog walk on their collar, if they said no, they'd probably do it. They do it into the tub. I can walk all of my dogs into the bathtub on the collar, and they don't want to be there, but they trust that, oh, all right, she grabbed him by the collar. Oh, okay, it's fine. It's fine. But I've worked with dogs that if you do that, you're not getting near their collar for months. Or it's just over. Don't come near me. Every time you come near me, you make me do something I don't want to do, and now you can't get near your dog. So it's not very black and white. You got a lot of things to unpack. Okay? I had a thought and it left, so never mind. So, that number of choices. Giving choice over to the dog doesn't mean the dog gets to do whatever they want whenever they want, right? We do have to eventually get them to do the course in the order that we want them to do it in. So we can't just like take the leash off and say, okay, it's your playground, go for it. Disneyland, have at it. But we can give them two choices that we can accept and let them choose between one or the other. So when I'm working with Shrek in particular, and when I get him out to train, that's my training time. It's not his hunting time. I carve that time out of my day to do training. So when I get him out, his options are start training, and he knows how to tell me he's ready to start training, or go back to the crate. Both are fine choices. I'm accepting of both choices. So he gets to have that choice. And he knows that if he chooses training, he's going to have to work, but he's going to get highly reinforced with lots of his favorite goodies. So he knows what's in it for him versus going back to his crate. Dog loves to nap. Dog loves his crate. So he knows what the two choices are, and he gets to choose which consequence he wants. But I don't think of one as a punishment and one as the good thing. They're both equally good to him. And the difference is I give him that choice and the freedom to choose. If he didn't have the freedom to choose, I would never put him back in his crate when he says, well, for one, I wouldn't ask. I would just, every time he looked away, I would probably say, you look back at me. Look back at me. I wouldn't allow him to even look away from me. I wouldn't allow him to sniff ever. I would be 100% making sure that dog never took his eyes off of me. I would just take away all choice. But if I give him the choice, I have to honor that I gave him the choice. All right. Lizzie says, can we talk a little bit about the relationship between consent and start button behaviors? Because they seem to be so closely related a lot of the time, but they're not just a single overlapping circle. Yeah, let's talk about it. So start button first. We can train a behavior that is paired with the consequence of doing another behavior. So typically when we train something, sit is paired with getting a cookie. Sit is paired with getting a cookie. Sit, cookie, sit, cookie, sit, cookie, sit, cookie. So when I say sit, the dog's like, yeah, I want a cookie. That's what they're saying. So if I say sit and the dog sits, the dog says, yes, I would like a cookie. So they sit. It's like a question. But if every time you ask them to sit, you brush their hair instead, you just like brushed, I don't know, the side of their neck fur. They sit, you brush their neck fur. They sit, you brush their neck fur. Eventually, sit means, would you like your neck fur brushed? All right. And so if the dog doesn't sit, the dog says, I don't want my neck fur brushed. So we can apply that to agility. Say just before entering the ring, we can ask for a behavior. Like when I touch the entry gate, I'm getting distracted by Jillian's comment, so I can't look at the computer right now. So I put my hand on the entry gate and I expect eye contact. And I originally trained that with food. So I touch the gate, they look up, they get food. I touch the gate, they look up, they get food. When that behavior was pretty reliable, I stopped feeding it. And then if I touch the gate, they look up at me, I open the gate, they get to go in. For my border collies, that's really reinforcing getting to go in with where the agility equipment is. For Shrek, that could mean, oh God, I have to work with all these distractions. So he can just not look at me and say, no, I don't want the gate to open. I would like the gate to stay closed. Okay. So that's like the difference. But there really is no difference, right? How you, whatever you reinforce the behavior with, whatever the consequence is, your cue becomes a question to the dog. Do you want this or not? Like I said, if sit is always paired with a cookie, sit is, would you like a cookie? And if sit means I'm gonna brush your neck fur, that it becomes a question, right? Because the dog isn't going, and so start button consent. We can't sit the dogs down and go, all right, you have the choice. You can say yes, you can say no. They don't get that concept. What they get is the concept of consequences. So when she asks for this behavior, I always get this cookie. Great, I'm on board with that. When she asks for this behavior, I always get grabbed by the collar and told to do it anyways. So why would I do that? Where things get tricky is if sometimes you listen and sometimes you don't. And a lot of this happens where we give consent in training, or we honor choices in training, and then we don't honor those choices in competition. So in training, you have your ready to work protocol, your dog's all gangbusters, you're getting ready to go. The dog's always saying yes, 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 because the cookies are flowing. So they're saying, yes, I would like a cookie. Yes, I would like a cookie. Yes, I would like a cookie. Then you get to a show, there are no cookies. It's, yes, I would like to go into the ring, and yes, I would like you to take my leash off, and yes, I would like to do these 20 obstacles now. And yes, I would like you to put my leash on. And sometimes it might be, no, I don't want you to take my leash off. But we take the leash off anyways. And then the dog refuses to leave the start line. And we go, oh, come on, 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 come on. And so now the consequences are changing. Sometimes taking your leash off leads to cookies. And sometimes taking your leash off leads to nagging and pressure and cheerleading and weirdness. So now you have two different consequences and very obvious context. So the dog trusts you in training and doesn't trust you in competition, because we tend to not listen in competitions. In general, I think we humans who are trying to put this in as more of a standard practice, we're doing our best work to listen during training. Okay. I don't know if this is on the same live or if it created a new one. Yay. Okay. Am I back? Something happened. No video. I'm upside down. What the bejesus? Okay. It fixed itself. Are we back? All right. I'll give everyone. Okay. Whew. It was just getting good too, and I lost. Okay. So we're gonna go back. I think just before shit got weird, Sarah had made a comment that in order for the dog to say yes to doing a full course of agility, they have to be without pay. They have to be capable of doing a full agility course without pay. So basically, stop asking for things in trials that they aren't capable of doing in training and expecting them to figure it out, because then what happens is the dog's like, okay, we're doing agility. And they're good for the first few trials. I see this all the time. They're good for like novice. They get their novice titles and everything's great. And then they're like, oh God, I can't do this. I'm so like, ugh. You've thrown them in the deep end. And so they start to realize that the consequences are changing and they don't really know what's at stake here. And so they start going, I don't know. And in competition, we tend to steamroll them. And the last part of Sarah's comment says, they can't say yes to something they can't do. I repeat it. They can't say yes to something they can't do. So if they don't really know how to do it, whether you're asking or not, it's not consent. It's not fair. They don't know what's on the table. So competing wise, being able to, so coming back to Lizzie's thoughts on back chaining, I do happen to back chain coursework that way. I think we talked about it in the delayed reinforcement chat, teaching the dog the procedure and then back chaining courses, because and I like that because they have done it before. I back chain an entire course because they've done it. The handling isn't going to change. The course isn't going to change. I can give them that feeling of this is what you're signing up for in very familiar settings when I back chain a course. So I think that is ideal. Whew. I am very chatty, talking my voice away. So we talked about limited choices as well, and how much you're willing to go with the compulsion part. So let's go back to that just a little bit. That in training, you don't have to do anything. And your dog's just always saying, yes, 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 keep it going, keep it going, keep it going, keep it going. But then in trials, they're kind of like, maybe. And that's when we tend to pull out those, oh, but come on, it's fine, let's do it, blah, 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 blah. That's also not honoring it. Like, maybes in most situations are no's. And if we think about consent between humans, consent between adults, maybes aren't yeses, right? So we have to think about it like that. And that if we, or the fallout of that, because some, like Smack, if he was like, maybe, and I was like, oh, come on, it'll be fine. He'll be like, yeah, it'll probably be fine. And that's not, and I don't think I would ever see fallout from him with that. But I did see fallout with that, with Shock. When her noise sensitivity kind of started revealing itself, and it started to be more intense because all of our outdoor trials where she was totally normal and functional moved in, and I was kind of noticing some different things about her starting the course. And I remember it quite clearly. She did a couple of runs indoors, and I noticed that she was like looking behind her a lot start line, and that was very abnormal for her. And then so we did another run, and she like walked. I released her off the start line, and she started walking, and she walked around the first jump. My first thought was, oh my God, she has 4 broken legs, because there's no way this dog is walking off the start line. So I thought maybe she was just dying. And you know, I kind of ran anyways, and she was kind of like, oh, okay, yeah. And as we got further away from the start line, she could function, but then she wouldn't even look at me during the next run. So without even knowing what I was doing, I didn't really know what was happening with her. I had like broken everything with just a little bit of, oh, it's okay, come on. And she's clearly telling me, no, it's not okay. And so with Shrek, I have all these ways of asking him, are you okay? Can you do this? Because I don't want to go there again. Like now it's very firmly like, if I give you a choice, it's 100% a choice. I will not nag. I will not cheerlead. I will not lure. I will not grab your collar. It's a choice. And I think we have to get there for it for us. Do that make sense? Do you have questions? Oh, I have one other thing. Is I think in agility, we get it in our heads that agility is fun because it's agility. So why is agility fun? Because it's agility. And why do dogs like agility? Because it's fun, right? It's agility, it's fun just because it's agility. So we have to remember that. Agility by itself is not fun. Agility becomes fun through positive reinforcement, through consequences, right? And we've talked about it in the past that some dogs are going to find agility more fun than other dogs, probably based on their genetic tendencies to like to run, like to jump, things like, right? Just like some dogs are going to be better at flyball because they like that. Some dogs are going to be better at bitey sports because they actually like biting things. I do not think you could get either one of my border collies to latch on to a bite sleeve. You could. Not if it was attached to a human. If it was just a toy, sure. But if it's attached, I don't think you could get it. They wouldn't like it. But my terrier, I could probably teach the Sheltie to latch on to a person faster than I could teach the border collies. But the youngest border collie, Screek, we could totally teach her to latch onto a human. No problem. You've seen the videos of her biting Graham. No problem. Okay. Yes, having cheer led a previous dog, never again. It's just, it doesn't even feel good. Like, and pretty much every team that I've worked with that they've had that cheerleady type behavior, they only have to cheerlead the dog in competition. They do not have to cheerlead the dog in training. And that is really because of this divide, that they have a choice in training and they don't have a choice in competition, or they have a choice, but the consequences are completely different. In training, there's just a free flow of food, and in competition, there's not, and the dog's just not prepared. And they can't consent to something they don't know how to do. Okay, so some comments coming in. I'm mostly just talking now. I went through my list. The part of what I was getting at with the back chaining comment, for the dog to willingly consent, the thing probably has to have some value in the first place. Exactly. You have to have a robust reinforcement history for the thing before you can then change the consequence. Because I don't think any of us would get very far teaching sit by brushing the dog's neck fur. Right? I don't think any of us would get very far with that. It's a consequence, but I can't say that it would be positive reinforcement. How do you get a dog to do a course without a treat in class, like in trials, which do small sequences and then treat outside the ring? So in a nutshell, yes. We teach the procedures. I teach the ring entry procedures. I teach the ring exit procedures. Then in all of my training, at kind of like every stage of the game, I make sure that they can do the individual behaviors without cookies on me, with cookies on the table, like we talked about last week with delayed reinforcement. Then when I start putting behaviors together into sequences in course, I tend to back chain. So if it's 20 obstacle course, I'll start with, say, obstacle 17, and I'll do 17, 18, 19, 20, leash on, go get the cookie jar. And I just like several leashes kind of piled up, or I have a leash runner or whatever, so that I can do the ring entry, 4 obstacles, ring exit routine, the whole thing, so that eventually they're saying yes to the whole thing. Ring entry, set up, leash off, start line, do some obstacles, and go. And the reason why I back chain it is then as I make it longer, the course is familiar. And so I know how to handle it. The dog knows how to handle it. I don't care if they're anticipating what the next obstacle is. I just want it to be familiar, because I'm just training the concept of saying yes to ring entry, start line routine, do some things, leash on, exit. I'm training that procedure. Okay, hardest part about training Micah. I was about ready to just stop trying with him to do agility as much as I wanted to. I really thought he hated it, and training him just bummed him out. So what did you do differently? Cheerleading takes a lot of energy. Kim says, I have cheered a previous dog, never again. Now have a noise-sensitive pup, and consent is so important, and so important to honor. Exactly. I think if you've had a dog you've had to cheerlead, you don't like how that felt. Because to me, cheerleading should mean like, wow, good for you, that was great. Not, come on, like, how did we get to that? Maybe there's some actual etymology. Like, don't cheerleaders say, yay, you did great? But I guess I'll keep the spirit going when the team sucks. I don't know. I just think I think cheerleading has a positive association in some people's brains. Like, yeah, you're telling the dog how great they're doing. That's fine. But if the dog is dragging it and not really wanting to be there, and you're saying I'm cheerleading them, then to me it's like you're nagging them. Come on, do it. Let's go. I kind of think of that as so here's the thing. I don't go with Graham, because that would be like the least motivating thing ever. But I will ride my bike while he runs. That totally fine with. But if we were both out on a run together and he was really far ahead of me and he was looking back over his shoulder going, come on, Megan, you can do it. Come on, Megan, you can do it. Come on, you can do it. No. That would not make me want to run with him more. That's how I feel about cheerleading. I was a cheerleader, and that's how I feel about cheerleading. Cheerleader of football teams and dogs. none of them gave me good experiences, obviously. All right. Okay. I think when cheerleading, you then see the dog perk up and they do the thing and you're reinforced. Yeah, that is a good point. So I think that is important to kind of know your learner, because I think if they just, it's a difference, right? There is such a thing as cheerleading as this is just praise. You're doing great. Keep doing what you're doing. And I think some dogs thrive on that. But I think cheerleading and nagging are like this. And we disguise nagging as cheerleading. So I think you just have to know what the function of the verbal diarrhea of your mouth is on course. And also what's normal here. So that might actually be a difference to me. I won't use her name, but anyways, a student, the dog was brilliant in training. Everything was going great. She asked if she could enter him in a competition. I thought, yeah, no problem. This is great. He's well prepared. He flew through novice and open. And then just a couple weekends. And it wasn't, it didn't surprise me. The dog had all of the skills. I had him from day one. The handler was, very good handler. She knew it wasn't her first dog. So it didn't surprise me that the dog flew through novice and open. And the dog probably flew through excellent too. Like boom, 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 boom. And then she emailed me and I hadn't been at any of these shows because I don't trial very much. And we talked about it at a class or something, that the dog was starting to slow down in competition. It wasn't going well. And she was starting to see that like things weren't going great. And so I was going to be at a trial coming up. So I made sure that I got there for her jump height. Okay. And you guys, it was named handler. This very quiet, very together handler that has been working with this dog for 2 years. It was very quiet. She was chattering at this dog the entire time. Come on, yeah, go. Like, I don't know if it was like half left over from her previous dog, where she was kind of cheerleady / naggy, but also half like nerves, just nervous energy needs to be get out of her. And the dog was just like, dog was freaked. It wasn't normal. The dog was fine. Ability just not with you. So if it's normal and if it's like reinforcing for you to go, yeah, that's so good in the middle of the course and keep going, I think all of my dogs would be like, what is she on? If I praise them in the middle of the course, because it's not normal. And I think it would be my board, like it should be normal, right? So cheerleading versus praise. And to the second part of Kim's comment that cues are too important at that time. Yeah, I think too, is that we aren't willing to let go of a potential cue, even though in the long run, it's going to mean less cues overall. And it's totally human. Okay. To change to online meant I lacked time to agility training and the motivation since everything got canned, but he could see the other dogs in the house training. He obviously likes it better than walks now. Catching up on comments. My begging version of cheerleading days are over. Paramount to coercion. If you loved me or whatever for me. Right. And we now know a lot more that they're not out there because they love us. They're out there because they love their cookies. Nikki says something obviously happened during that time. Maybe we bonded better, we missed the tugging and all the treats, or he realized he loves running fast in tunnels, but I really can't pinpoint exactly what caused the change, but now I can't keep him away from the equipment. Sometimes time away kind of resets things. So it's always when I'm having a problem, the first thing I do is give it a month off. And then a lot of times I come back and the issue's gone. But also, if there's probably a lot to it, but usually that's my first go-to is give it a break. And then we come back. Okay. So I just want to kind of say that even if you don't think you're using consent in training, you are probably. So think like loopy training, for instance. If you wait for the dog, let's just think reinforcement procedures. If you throw a cookie on the ground and the dog gets it, and they come back and they make eye contact, saying, yes, I'd like another cookie. Okay, so you can do that again. Then you say sit or jump. Let's stick to agility. You ask them for a jump, you throw a cookie, and they eat the cookie. You see them eat the cookie, but then they sniff a little bit more before coming back. They were saying no in that exact moment. But when they came back, they said, okay, now I am. So if you're allowing that to happen, if you're allowing the dog to tell you when they're ready for the next rep, for the next jump, for the next whatever, you're giving them the choice to say yes or no. What you do when they say no is more important than what you do when they say yes, right? So you can have parameters. Like for Shrek, most of the time, he has like 3 seconds. If he can kind of get over things and check back in within that 3 seconds, I'll probably keep going. But I'm going to pay really attention, make sure that not that it's back to immediate, that the 3 seconds has gone away. I'm not going to allow every single rep I do to include sniffing, right? So if I start to see more sniffing coming in, I'm going to take it as a no and just end the session and go. What tends to happen is we let that no pile up, and the dog, and we talked about this a long time ago in the Distractible Dogs live, is that if we keep going harder and harder and harder and pushing them harder and harder, even though we're observing that little bit of extra sniffing, we're ignoring their small tines, their whispers, and waiting for them to give us a big no, which in Shrek's case would be leaving to hunt. Okay? And how much, I already talked about, I'm not cheerleading, not gonna get him to come back. You might have a different idea, and you might have a different dog. Like I said, if Smack did a little extra sniffing and I say, hey, come on, leave that, he'd be like, oh, okay. And it would be fine. I don't think I would see any fallout. With Shrek, I think it would get worse. It would get worse if I said, hey, leave that, come back to work. If I made him come back to work, I think he would get worse. I don't think he would go, oh, okay. So it depends on the dog. Can we think about consent in the other direction when the dog really wants to do the thing? Will consent to do this in order to gain access to the thing I want, or is that something else? You mean like maybe that's a different spectrum of I want to, but should you? Like, then are we getting into the, you want the thing so badly, you're not in a good state of mind? So I think of that as want to versus should you. I really want to drive the car, but I'm not prepared to. So maybe I think go back to you can ask questions based on what the consequence is. Backchaining. Seesaw. I know a handler who cheerleads nags the dog over the seesaw, thinking after this discussion it would be better to backchain the obstacle, building the value of the known at the end to improve the performance. Exactly. I mean, there are 100 ways we could teach the teeter, but I backchain it always so that the end of the teeter is the most valuable. I don't feed dogs in the middle of the teeter. So there are different things that can cause the need to cheerlead the dog over the teeter, but if it is not going to the end of the teeter, they either know that they should, they're afraid to, they don't want to. I mean, there's tons of different ways. So yeah, in general, I would go backchain. Okay, Lizzie says exactly. So then on that part, I think you can ask different questions, and this kind of goes into a little bit more of Sarah's expertise of asking a series of questions of the worked up dog that, you know, is your brain even still capable of making good choices? So again, just changing the consequence of those behaviors changes the question. So in conclusion, I think most of us are using choice in our training. I think where it goes wrong is that we don't honor choices in every context, or the consequence is different depending on what the stakes are for you. And I see it, I've done it. That in training, the handler is relaxed and gives them time to acclimate, time to re-engage between reinforcers. If the dog is like, I can't right now, they'll end their turn early. But then you go to a seminar that you've paid hundreds of dollars to be there, and you've driven all day, all morning, all night, whatever. And it's like, and you make them however you decided to make them. Nagging, cheerleading, luring, grabbing by the collar. You've still made them, right? When the consequences are different depending on the context, we break things down really quickly. And then, of course, it gets really messy if you're asking them to do something or say yes to something that they don't know how to do. So I don't think any of us have to necessarily change a lot of the ways we're training. I think we just need to get more consistent with them across the board. One way or the other. Either give them choice in every context of agility, or don't give them choice in any context of agility. Does it make sense? Spoiler, I think you should give them choice because agility is just agility. But all I want is happy dogs and happy people. giving them choice doesn't mean that they get to choose whatever obstacles that they want. You can just give them 2 choices that you can live with. It doesn't mean give them 10 choices all the time. It says this outcome does the dog want? Any other questions or comments on that note? Sarah says, when important to them, coerce inherent. Yeah, when they want the thing really, really badly. I was trying to think of, is there anything that Shrek just wants even that badly that he'd say yes for no matter what? And I'm not sure there is. It's just very... I mean, except for, like, his favorite thing to do is sniff, and he can do that whenever. I can't control it. So... Okay, anything else? Oh yeah, I forgot. Also, not very good as a reinforcer. But that's all now on ice. And not a problem for anyone. Okay, guys, super questions, super discussion. Keep it going. It's really difficult to find questions once this is a recording. So if you watch this later and you have a question, it's actually just easier to create a new post in the group, and I'll see it and probably get you an answer a lot faster than if you type it into the recording. All right. I will see you guys next week. We'll vote on a new topic because I have no idea what we're going to talk about. And questions about coming on the group, any of those things. I will see you guys later.